Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Sam Darnold won't get the franchise tag, but where will he be playing in 2025? Also, whoever coined the phrase, "when it rains, it pours," was clearly talking about the Dallas Mavericks. And the Chiefs are human after all.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
The Minnesota Vikings have not placed the franchise tag on quarterback Sam Darnold. The reporting stating that they believe he has earned the right to hit free agency. Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings joins me now. Luke, NFL teams not normally the benevolent types, so what's really going on here?
Yeah, it seems like the Vikings are still open, I'll say, to the idea of Sam Darnold coming back. But tagging him and then going for a tag and trade was never going to work. There was a lot of talk about it in Minnesota media about why won't they do this tag and trade thing? It seems like free real estate, but it's not so free, right? You end up signing him to the tag. He's got to sign it, which means he's got to play ball, which functionally gives him a no trade clause. If he doesn't like the team that you're about to trade him to, he can just stop picking up his phone, and then the Vikings are left with a $41 million cap hit that they can't do anything about until Sam Darnold comes to the table. So they just didn't have enough control over the situation to feel like they were going to be able to actually pull that off and get him tagged, traded away before the start of free agency, when you're going to start needing that money, unless you want the Vikings to sit out, the tampering period, which I don't think anybody in Minnesota does. That wasn't really going to be a feasible idea. Just a little bit too much risk there, but that doesn't mean that they hate the guy. My understanding is they've given him some kind of offer. There is something on the table. The two sides are quote unquote working toward a deal. That's the way all the reporters have given it. But that deal will be short term, and I think it would be team friendly if he signed it. So it's ultimately up to Sam Darnold to decide, look, he loves it in Minnesota. He loves Kevin O'Connell. He loves his teammates. What's that worth to him? And yeah, my prediction is not enough, and that he's going to hit the market.
Well, so that brings me to an interesting question, because I was trying to game this out earlier today going, because this is what I do in my spare time, trying to figure out, okay, what is the place that makes more sense for Sam Darnold than the Minnesota Vikings, and what team might be willing to pay him that money? And I'm like, okay, is he really going to go to the Raiders? Is he going to be Tom Brady's first big quarterback swing with the Raiders? Kirk Cousins actually makes more sense in Cleveland, plus the money part of this for the Browns. I struggled to find a place where he made more sense than Minnesota, and that would be willing to pay him.
So I don't think Minnesota is willing to pay him full market. They are stoked on the idea of J.J. McCarthy being the 2025 Week 1 starter. They'll give him a Daniel Jones or equivalent to beat in camp, but they're stoked on this. And they're stoked on the idea of having him on the rookie quarterback scale, having a lot of money to build around him and to rebuild parts of that defense. Dude, the Vikings have a lot of needs. They need to rebuild their whole cornerback room. They need help on the interior of the D-line. They couldn't get any pressure. They need help on the interior of the O-line. They had all kinds of meltdowns late in the season. Y'all saw it in the wild card game, 9 sacks. They've got needs, and they've got a lot of agents. They lead the league in snaps departing to free agency. Some of that is guys like Cam Robinson, who will be replaced by Christian Darrisaw naturally. Some of that is somebody like Sam Darnold. Some of those replacements are already on the roster, but a lot of guys are headed to free agency. So they've got a lot to do with that money, and they've got 60-ish million, depending on what website you look at. And so to just blow 40 of that on Sam Darnold when they don't really need to, that's not really their favorite option. But if he'll come for 30 some 20 some 30 some, then they're a little bit more open to that. But I don't know if Sam Darnold's going to be.
Is there a team that you think makes sense, that where you have that opportunity and that cost Goldilocks zone for him?
I think there are teams that are going to want him long term. And I see a team like the Raiders or the Giants or even the Titans, teams that look at the draft and go, no, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, no thank you, and say, well, let's just roll with this. Let's Baker Mayfield it like the Bucs did. And they're looking for that kind of thing, a Baker Mayfield, a Geno Smith, that mid-tier quarterback deal with mid-tier quarterback play. But, those teams have made the playoffs. And so if you're the Titans and if you're the Giants, you've been in this horrible streak of, one playoff win in the last, 14 years. If you're the Raiders or the Titans and you've just been in futility forever, that sounds pretty good. If you're somebody like the Steelers, you might want a little bit more. Plus, they got two guys in-house that I think they like pretty well.
You can stay up to date on the Minnesota Vikings by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Vikings on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. You're Locked On Sports Today. Coming up, things just keep getting worse for the Mavericks. Before we get to that, Saquon Barkley got the bag again. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting features because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Tonight, I'm looking at the Bucks and the Mavs. The Bucks beat the Mavericks in Big D just a few days ago and look to finish the job at home. The Bucks played last night against the Hawks and won. They are 9.5-point favorites right now. New FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets. If your first $5 bet wins, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Saquon Barkley became the highest paid running back in NFL history on Tuesday.
So the Philadelphia Eagles just made Saquon Barkley the highest paid running back in NFL history, agreeing to a 2-year contract extension worth over $41 million, $20 a year annually, over $20 million a year, $36 million guaranteed. What an insane time to be an Eagles fan. A year ago today, you would have said there's never a chance Howie Roseman would ever pay a running back anything that's worth over a 1-year minimum contract. And now he makes a running back the highest paid player at his position ever. But it's a really cool story. And again, it's proof that Howie Roseman's strongest trait is being creative, being open-minded, changing his philosophies, zigging when the rest of the league zags. And this move helped him win a championship, going in on the running back position, the perfect player at the perfect time, won him a title in 2024. The running back position kind of getting revived. What a cool story for Saquon and the position as a whole. This is a big win for running backs out there.
Some have wondered if Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams could be a packaged deal this offseason. The New York Jets made that a possibility on Tuesday by releasing the former All-Pro receiver. It should come as no surprise as he was due to count $38.3 million on the salary cap. That would have been a league high in 2025. This one move more than doubles the Jets' available cap room as they look to hit the reset button from the Rodgers era.
Davante Adams is now a former member of the New York Jets. I'm John, the host of Locked On Jets, and the Jets are releasing wide receiver Davante Adams. The move will create about $30 million in cap space. It was a necessary move. This is a Jets team with a lot of holes to fill and not a whole lot of cap space to operate, so this creates about $30 million. Adams, at 32 years of age, can help some team out there, but isn't really a player who makes a lot of sense for a retooling team like the New York Jets. Looking back, the trade for Adams was a mistake. Adams was actually quite productive during his brief tenure with the Jets, but the team gave up a third-round pick for a receiver who could not help them win. The Jets were 2-4 at the time they made the trade, and they were showing no signs that they were a wide receiver away from the Super Bowl. It was a desperation move that never should have been made. The Jets now find themselves out a third-round pick. The best thing you can say about this trade is that the Jets have turned the page. For more on the Jets, tune into the Locked On Jets podcast every Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
On the NBA hardwood, the T-Wolves hosted the reeling Sixers.
Wolves coming off that win versus Phoenix Sunday night. First game tonight of their back-to-back. First, a pretty banged-up Sixers team. Sluggish start, especially knowing, again, Philly was banged up, plus they're on their own back-to-back. 1 of 7 from 3 to start the game. They go up just 4 into halftime, and they need needed a Mike Conley half-court buzzer beater just to do it. End of the third quarter, they started to heat up, and then in the fourth quarter, 76ers legs, again, second game of a back-to-back. You could just tell they got tired at the end. Wolves made it rain from three, 18 threes on the night. That helped, again, cap off just a dominant fourth quarter, 43 point fourth quarter, by the way.
And the number one team in men's college basketball goes down. Buzz Williams has had Bruce Pearl's number at A&M.
Well, the Auburn Tigers drop one. The SEC champs drop one to Texas A&M in a game that felt odd from the get-go. It's like you obviously want Auburn to win. You're pulling for the Tigers, but you know that this game didn't mean anything to Auburn. Meant a ton to Texas A&M. If you watch the TV broadcast, they let you know every 5 seconds that Texas A&M basketball had never beaten a number one team. Well, now they have. Congrats to them. But this is all about how Auburn responds. Didn't really seem like they wanted it tonight. Denver Jones was out. I bet we see a very different team on Saturday. 1, it's at home. 2, it's senior day. 3, it's against Alabama. Regular season finale. That's next.
Dallas Mavericks fans' favorite show right now is Severance, because they wish they could sever their memories of this season. Just have someone else experience what has gone on for the Mavericks this season. First, it was the Luka Doncic trade. Now Kyrie Irving done for the year and presumably into next year with a torn ACL. Isaac Harris from Locked On Mavericks joins me now. And Isaac, this goes from bad vibes to worse vibes, even for a team that before the injury, it looked like it had a chance, if they could get healthy, to be dangerous in the West.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is rock bottom, right? I mean, this is rock bottom in franchise history. We like to, compare
famous last words, but yeah.
Yeah, you could. I mean, the Mavs didn't make the playoffs in the whole decade of the 90s. Dirk, after winning the MVP, and the We Believe Warriors, that was just a tough stretch there. But this is worse than that. I mean, these past 31 days as a Mavs fan is unlike anything I've ever seen. With the Luka trade and the entries, and even the comments and statements and stuff from management and ownership, it's just a roller coaster. But in the midst of all of it, you've kind of held out a little bit of hope of, man, we had that one half that Anthony Davis had, and we're like, Kyrie is out there and PJ Washington, some of these guys are like, man, if they're healthy, like they're still going to be really good in the short term. Like, who are you going to for sure be confident it's going to beat them, maybe outside of OKC, in a playoff series if all the guys are healthy? And now that's just completely shattered.
Yeah, the irony to me was, a week or so ago, I'm going, a team that could really give the Lakers problems is the Mavs, because the Lakers have no matchup for Anthony Davis and no matchup for Kyrie Irving. Who's going to defend either one of those guys? Well, neither of them can stay on the court. So if you're a Mavericks fan, is it just like no hope, or where do you go from? Like, where do you go from here? I'm rendered speechless at this whole discussion, because it truly is just like beyond words right now.
Yeah, I've spent some time, worked for the team in some capacity for the past 5 or 6 years. And this was the first season that I've just stopped working in some official capacity with them. And so I've always tried to bring some type of positive angle to things, or a different perspective. Both, it's kind of like how I'm wired, but also, different relationships and stuff I have in the organization. But there's nothing right now. Right now, there's just no way to no other way to put it. You just got to pack it in. I think everybody right now just wants the season to be done. Pack it in, announce the rest of the guys are going to be out for the rest of the season, which there's not much left anyway. Try to just get the best draft pick as possible. I think the fans want it to be done. I think the players and coaches want it to be done. I just think so many people, outside of maybe Patrick Dumont and Nico Harrison, they might want it to keep on going to make money and to try to prove that the trade was right and all this stuff. But I think everybody else just wants to close the chapter on the season and just say, we've had enough. There's no point at this point.
I'm going to ask you a question that might make Mavs fans a little mad that I'm asking it right now. I don't ask it to dance on the grave of this season by any means, but I am fascinated to know, in a sort of morbid curiosity way, how you think Mavericks fans will handle the Luka of the playoffs? Will they be cheering for him? Will they be what will the reaction be if they go on a deep playoff run, or I guess from a Mavericks perspective, God forbid, win the title?
Well, the first step in all of it is April 9th, when the Mavericks will probably be tanking and hardly anybody playing for them, and Luka Doncic and the Mavs will come into town. That's going to be an experience like none other, because, I mean, it's going to be predominantly all Lakers fans. And it's literally going to be Luka dancing on the Mavs' grave. And, you know, there's nothing you can do about it. It's going to be wild. But I honestly think a lot of Mavs fans will be rooting for him. And, you know, there's no hard feelings from the Mavs fan side towards Luka. It's almost like he's like one of our own. Now, I personally grew up hating the Lakers, so there's not a worse team or franchise for it to happen for me. And I just can't root for the Lakers. But I think a lot of fans, we've seen it even with our podcast, you know, listeners and stuff of, hey guys, we love you, but you know, we just got to root for the Lakers and Luka right now. It's kind of like, I mean, if you want to zoom out, the change in fandom over the years of, you know, it's not all just team focused now. Yeah. And growing up, there's a lot of people, it's just, they lead with their player fandom. And I think this is the case in point, prime example of the Luka separation of Mavs fans, the Mavs fans separation of that. And a finals run, a deep playoff run. I mean, I feel like salt in the wound isn't even like enough to feel the pain of that.
You can stay up to date all year on the Dallas Mavericks by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Mavs on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. It's a great show, and it's a bummer. This is what's happening with the team, but hang out with your buddies and you can get through it together. Coming up, the Chiefs are human. The Kansas City Chiefs have seemingly let the game come to them for a few years, and everything has worked out. Now, as Locked On NFL host Tony Wiggins and Kevin Ostreicher discuss, the Chiefs need some work.
Normally, Kansas City's just sitting there like, whatever y'all don't want, we're at the back of this draft. Whoever y'all don't take, we're going to take him, whether we need him or not, because our roster's full, and they usually end up in a good player, whether it's Carl Loftus, whether, you know, all of these dudes, Rashid Rice, they got in the second round, he was a fallback player. Look, they ain't in that position now because of free agency, because they've been so good, and because they actually missed a little bit on the offensive line. The Chiefs are finally in a position where they're human like everybody else, and they got to pick something for need.
Yeah, they do. And you mentioned the offensive line. I know they franchise tag Trey Smith, but, you know, other than that, you do have a couple of question marks. You know, Creed Humphrey's not a question mark. Joe Thuney, if he's able to play his position, is not a question mark. But you have to figure out the tackle positions with Jawan Taylor and, you know, whatever they want to do on the other side there, because they invested a high-level draft pick into a rookie. It didn't work out for them. They tried to put this patchwork thing over the tackle position, didn't work. So now for the Chiefs, if there is an offensive lineman that either falls, or even if it's a guy that might be like an early second-round guy and they have their first-round pick, they might reach for that guy now because they need to. In their Super Bowl losses, poor offensive line play has been a huge reason, and credit to the defense as well. You know, Tampa's defense and Philly's defense, what they're able to do too. But, you know, we saw after that first Super Bowl loss, Wig, the Chiefs went out there and replaced all 5 starters. They were not messing around. All 5 starters on that line were gone the next season. So you're right. It's like they're able to sit back, kind of figure out, you know, last year trading with the Bills for Xavier Worthy, and like, okay, we like a guy, you know, just going to take BPA, which works. But when you have a need staring you right in the face, you have to address it. And it feels like the Chiefs have been like this invincible team that can just do whatever they want, put together whoever they want, and they're going to win. Well, they got by with all these close games last season. And then obviously in the Super Bowl, their weaknesses reared their head. So I think that they need to figure out things based off a need this year, and we'll see how that takes them.
The margin is so slim. Because when the Chiefs won in 2019, that 49ers team was more talented than the Chiefs were. The Chiefs just had Patrick Mahomes. and Tyreek Hill, and that was good enough. Chris Jones, Andy Reid, that helped too, of course. And in 2022, that Eagles team just wasn't ready. The Chiefs were pretty lucky that that was the case because that Chiefs team was probably more talented than they were. And the 49ers team they beat the year later was more talented than the Chiefs were. The fact that they've already won so much is a credit to Patrick Mahomes, but the problem is it's not a sustainable way to win. Don't let Tom Brady and Bill Belichick fool you into thinking it is. In fact, don't let Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid fool you into believing it is. The margins are too small. That Bucs team that blew the doors off them in the Super Bowl, they were clearly better than the Kansas City Chiefs. This Eagles team that blew the doors off the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, clearly better. The problem is Patrick Mahomes, for all of his greatness, can only overcome so much. And we saw this in the Patriots dynasty. It's ultimately the reason why the dynasty ended. They made one last run and then just couldn't keep it together. They have to build this roster back. We have to be talking about the Kansas City Chiefs and, oh, look at all those guys, not who are they going to throw the ball to? Who's going to block for Patrick Mahomes? Those stories have to be over. We have to know. Or this team is going to run up against better rosters and Mahomes is not going to be enough every time. But he probably still will be a lot, let's be honest. And finally, Steve Kerr believes the good of the game is at stake if the league doesn't start having its officials call more traveling violations. I mean, maybe, but it feels like the list of for the good of the game doesn't have more traveling calls high up. Let's fix replay first. Can we do that? Put a shot clock on replay, and then we can worry about traveling and carrying and other things. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up, who's poised to make headlines as the NFL's calendar turns over? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.